Welcome to Leaders Recon, where we discuss leadership, warrior skills, and other unique opportunities within the G3 Leader Development Branch. I'm your host, Joshua Carr, and today we have with us Sergeant Major Williams from TR and Sergeant Major Campbell from the Sergeant Majors Academy. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Before we dive into, kind of the academy and I know the fellowship program, which is a piece that Sergeant Major Campbell really want to kind of highlight today. I guess what is that, unique experience that you've had in the military? Both of you have long, illustrious careers so far. What's that, thing that really stands out in your military career so far, from your perspective as a Sergeant Major?
So I've had kind of a diverse background. So I'm an infantryman by MOS, but I've been in, around, and just a traditional guardsman, multiple units, even though I only hold one MOS. So I've been lucky enough to experience different leadership skills, different leadership traits, qualities, and things that I've done throughout my career that have kind of helped me understand and look at things differently than a traditional career infantryman may look at. So that's been an opportunity that I've been happy to have experienced, sir.
What about you, Sergeant Major Campbell?
That's a tough question. I kind of look back on my career, and most of my career I spent as a traditional guardsman, growing up in the aviation community. I can tell and I often do reflect back on my career, and there were things at every level. I think there were events and there were people at every level that had significant impacts on my career. And if I look back and I say one was any more important than the other, I can't say that. I think that at every level, at every opportunity I've had, and I've had some good leaders, some good mentors over the years, and some great experiences that have shaped who I am as a Sergeant Major today.
So you kind of brought up something that I think is going to lead right into what we were just talking about with the Sergeant Majors Academy, being a traditional guardsman. So can you give us an overview, Sergeant Major Campbell, of for those that are not as familiar with what the academy is, what its chief goals are and stuff, can you give us a quick overview of what that is?
It really, just the real short answer to that is the Sergeant Major Academy their goal is to develop senior enlisted leaders that are capable of engaging in critical thinking and functioning as senior enlisted advisors to their commanders at all levels. So
I know that there's a substantial resident and then non-resident parts of that course. Can you explain what those class sizes are? What's the makeup of that, especially for the guard formations a little bit?
I can give you some of the details on that. So just to clarify that, right, it's one course. It is the Sergeant's Major course that's got two different delivery methods, two different programs of instruction. You've got the resident course, which is a 10-month course that's taught here at the Sergeant's Major Academy on Fort Bliss. And then you've got the non-resident course, which is a 2-year program of instruction. And it's attended by students from all three components, from all branches of the services, quite frankly, just like the resident course. But that's the difference. The non-res course is taught over a course of 2 years, whereas the resident course is 10 months. Both, based on some of the research that I've done, the class sizes fluctuate year to year, but on average, both the resident course and the non-resident course typically admit in the range of about 700 students a year.
For the non-resident course, which is predominantly what most guardsmen will attend, I know that TR recently kind of instituted a prep program, if it was for that. Can you kind of expound on that and what you've seen? I think you're a student in the course right now, correct?
Yeah, I'm actually a student in class 46. So I'm almost done. I'll go through my phase 3 this coming spring. The Army National Guard is the predominant utilizer of the non-res course. We input about 400 students into the phase 1 every year. A couple years ago, we identified a high percentage of non-completions through the course, about 25%. So my predecessor, Sergeant Major Kevin Mays, and the former G3 Sergeant Major got together with CSM Sampa and decided to institute a couple things, one of those being the orientation course. So the orientation course is not part of the Sergeant Major Academy curriculum. It is an Army National Guard specific orientation program. It is only for Army National Guard Compo 2 soldiers, and it's a mandatory attendance. The only one who can, let you out of that is the Army National Guard CSM, right? So in instituting this, we identified some key things that the students were saying they were lacking when they got into the course. One of those, and one of the major things being writing. It's been a long time since some of the Master Sergeants, First Sergeants starting this course and may have been to college. So they might not be as familiar with the APA formatting, Army writing styles, and things of that nature that they're going to encounter while going through the course. So we've done it in 2 different versions right now. We did, for Class 46, we did a 5-day in-resident at the Professional Education Center in Little Rock. Where we brought in senior leaders from the Army National Guard CSM, State Command Sergeants Major, as well as folks from TRADOC, FORSCOM to talk about the Army on a strategic level, as well as we brought in previous class students. So I was Class 46, we brought in Class 45, and for the one that we just did, which was virtual, we brought in Class 46 students to actually brief the new group on what they should be able to expect and some of the things that we found more difficult, some of the things that we found to not be as taxing. So the orientation really is the first introduction you're going to have to what you're going to be expected to do for the next 24 months.
So sticking on the DL topic right now, what does that workload look like? You're a student right now. What is that if you're a senior enlisted leader looking to go through the academy in the near future? What do I need to budget?
Yes.
For time and energy?
So individual experiences may vary, right? But being that it is a roughly 24-month course, and it's completely online until Phase 3, right? My experience, Phase 1, when I very first started, I spent more time, probably 6 to 8 hours a week, reviewing, reading, just taking notes and understanding things, and that's fluctuated throughout the course based on my level of familiarity with the topic that we're actually doing, based off of what the assignments are, be it a writing assignment, a briefing. So I started off probably 6 to 8 hours a week. Sometimes I could get away with a little less. Sometimes I had to ramp it back up, just based off how much stuff we had going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Sergeant Major Campbell, if he attended the non-resident course as well. What his experience was. So.
No, I actually am a graduate of the non-res course. It was Class 33, for anybody who's counting.
Oh, wow.
Maybe I'll show my age a little bit there, but yeah, Sergeant Major Williams hit it right. It's the workload is different per student. I mean, it's just like any other form of education. Different students have different experiences. It is a workload though, and it is work, and it does take effort. From my perspective, and I wrote my master's paper on this very subject, on persistence and distance education, specifically with the non-res course in mind. But it is different, but there's a misconception, I think, with a lot of our senior NCOs that they come to the non-res course and they think, well, it's online, it's going to be easy. And as Sergeant Major Williams can attest, and anybody who's come to the non-res course can attest, distance education is not easy.
So that actually brought me back to a question I had gotten from actually Sergeant Major at my home unit, right? And I think we talked about this the other day, Sergeant Major Williams, and that was, talking about, you mentioned it's one course, Sergeant Major Campbell. It's just the difference in delivery. And so I guess, what does the academy do, I guess, to kind of facilitate, those same levels of standards between, the subject matter that's getting taught, while you're there through the course versus, like papers getting critiqued and stuff as you're coming in on the online version?
Well, I know from my perspective, as I said, it's one course. So our department chairs and vice chairs talk regularly about the curriculum throughout the department. And as I said, it's not So when you talk distance education, we can't take the curriculum that we teach here at the resident course and just move it online. Throughout education, it's physically impossible to do that and achieve the same learning outcomes. So a lot of the curriculum needs to be adjusted a little bit for the online environment. I can tell you one of the significant changes that the Sergeant's Major course has made over the last couple of years is in the delivery method. I know, like when I came through the course in class 33, it was a lot of what they call interactive multimedia instruction, where the student just kind of sat in front of the computer and clicked through a bunch of slides. Especially now that the Sergeant's Major Academy has been accredited by the Higher Learning Commission, the non-res course is now moving and has moved to a more collegiate environment where it is more interactive, and it's kind of closing that transactional distance between the students that are spread out around the globe and their instructors and the curriculum.
So you actually just mentioned something there, Sergeant Major Campbell, that was on my list of questions, which was, talking about the value add to soldiers that complete the Sergeant Major's Academy, both as members of the military, but even on the civilian side as well. And you mentioned something there about accreditation. Can you give us a rundown of what are some of both the educational value add pieces that you see for individuals or graduates, and then kind of what the impacts are for those individual soldiers and their units when they go back?
I can. So a couple of things on that. So the Sergeant's Major course was accredited by the Higher Learning Commission, and it's a branch campus of the Command and General Staff College. So now we're in our third year where students that are attending the resident course have an opportunity to work with the education office. And in addition to their academic studies here at the Academy, based on their academic history, any college courses that they may have taken in the past leading up to the Academy, and then classes that they can take while they're here at the Academy, in addition to the Academy curriculum, they have the opportunity to graduate not only Sergeant's Major course, but to achieve a bachelor's degree in labor and workforce development from the CGSC. At the moment, non-res students don't have that same option yet. The Academy is working diligently to get the non-resident course accredited the same way. However, that being said, even today, students that are coming through the Sergeant's Major Academy have access to their joint services transcripts, which, in my day, it was called the ARTS transcript. But I know that when I was working on my bachelor's degree at Worcester State University in Massachusetts, Worcester State University accepted a lot of my experience in the military, plus a lot of my courses that I took through the Sergeant's Major Academy, and gave me equivalent credit. So NCOs coming through the resident or non-resident course have that opportunity to take their experiences and take their education here at the Academy and apply it towards a bachelor's degree.
So then following up on that, kind of switching over to Sergeant Major Williams, you're up in the course right now, about to graduate. Sergeant Major Campbell's been graduated for a little bit of time now. Well, I guess what were some of your, from starting the course till now when you're about to graduate, what are the, key takeaways that you said, hey, this is what the Academy really, afforded me from your perspective. And then I'd like to get Sergeant Major Campbell, your perspective as well, being postgraduate for quite some time now.
So I would have to say, at the Sergeant's Major level or at the senior NCO level, you need to be able to communicate clearly, consistently, and professionally, right? So it's not something that we are used to doing on a daily basis, depending on where you've been assigned. So the one thing is very, very writing heavy, the Academy is. So I think it's really driving you to, regardless of the topic that you're covering and what module you're in throughout as you move through the course, it's very writing focused, because you lose credibility when you can't write professionally, and so I think that's a staple and one of the biggest takeaways I've got from the course. It's just hey, check and check again. Make sure you pay attention to Army writing style, AR 2550, you know, and formatting, because it's important.
And Sergeant Major Campbell, what are some of your reflections there?
Yeah, so looking back at my career at the academy, and you know, Sergeant Major Williams didn't really say it, but I'll say it. I mean, some of my students in the resident course say it, that, you know, what's the so what? Like, why do I have to learn this, and how is it going to affect me as a Sergeant Major? You know, for a lot of us, and my experiences alone, right? And so when I came through the academy, there were things that I kind of sat there and I said, why do I need to know this? And is this important? But what students have to remember is that this is probably their last opportunity to educate themselves as a senior non-commissioned officer. Many of our graduates are going to go on and serve at the battalion level. Many of them will go to the brigade and even to the nominative level. So what we have to do is our curriculum has to match that and prepare them for positions at those senior levels. I will tell you that I've had that aha moment, especially over the last 5 or 6 years serving at the brigade and working for general officers, where, you know, there were things and events that I got engaged in that, you know, I was actually had to dig back to my time at the academy and remember that curriculum back there. So, as Sergeant Major Williams said, it's like, it's important for us as senior NCOs to be good communicators, verbally and in writing. Unfortunately, the Army has done a horrible job training non-commissioned officers to write effectively. We're getting better. I will say that we're getting better, and we're starting to educate our NCOs on how to write effectively earlier in their careers. But it is important, as Sergeant Major Williams said, that if you prepare a written document and it's not formatted correctly, and if it's not grammatically correct, chances are the recipient of that communication is just going to throw in a trash can, and we as sergeants major are going to lose our credibility, and our organizations are going to lose credibility.
So then, piggybacking off of that, you know, what's some of your advice to those senior NCOs that are getting ready to attend the Sergeant Major's Academy to set themselves up for success, whether it's DL or in person?
For a student coming to either course, and I guess to focus on the non-risk course for a second, from the National Guard perspective, is most importantly time management. You know, we talked a little bit already about how much time you have to invest to succeed at the academy, and we tell our resident students the same thing, quite frankly, that you have to budget your time. You have to carve out that time and dedicate it to studying. You know, and you also have to have a good study space, right? And I think Sergeant Major Williams can attest to that. You don't necessarily want to use the kitchen table, because you're going to get interrupted quite frequently. But then the writing piece, I will tell you that the only way to get good at writing is to write, and to write some more.
Were you in an M-Day status or as a traditional guardsman when you went through the resident course? Or the non-resident course, excuse me?
No, I was. So I had actually been selected for Sergeant Major when we were deployed, and started the academy while deployed. And then when I came back, I went back to my civilian job. I was an M-Day soldier in the Massachusetts National Guard.
So Sergeant Major Campbell, that kind of leads into one of my questions about the work-life balance. You were a traditional guardsman, had that civilian career, and managed your responsibilities as a soldier. How did you do that?
Great question. Sometimes I wonder. But I will say that how I managed it was, I had a tremendous amount of support from my wife and from my family. They knew that attending the academy was important to me. You know, and I've said it over the years. It's like, I've been fortunate that I've had two very successful careers. You know, one in the civilian world and one in the Guard. And so having that support, if I had not had the support of my family to get through that, I never would have been able to finish it. And then, as I said, it's like try to find that balance. So there was a lot of long days, there were a lot of long nights. But as I said, oftentimes it's like I would kind of just, I was fortunate that I had a small workshop in my basement. So I used to just kind of go down there to study for quiet space, but then still, in addition to carving out time for studying, you got to try to make time for family too.
So Sergeant Major Campbell, you really mentioned, it was important to have that family support and whatnot while you were going through the academy. What was your civilian career, by the way, that you're?
I was a senior executive in security investigations management.
Okay, wow. So now, Sergeant Major Williams, you've had a little bit of a different experience being a AGR soldier while going through it. Can you give us a highlight of what that experience looked like for you?
Yeah, so I would consider myself pretty fortunate in the fact to be an active guard reserve soldier and going through this. While it is time consuming and it does require a lot of effort and time at night and on the weekends. I don't have a civilian career I'm also competing with, but in my experience so far, it's really the success for me has been that just open communication with my family. Like Sergeant Major Campbell said, that family support's great. Just being honest with my wife up front. Hey, this is gonna take a lot of time, and this is what I'm signing up for. So that way, on those Sundays when I've got a deadline, because maybe I should have been working on something a little earlier than I had been. Maybe I procrastinated a little bit. I can sit down and get after it. So I consider myself fortunate. I mean, I don't really have the ability to work on it during the duty day, but it's definitely experience that it does take a toll on what you're working on and your family. So I think that's their support's what is really the best for that.
So before we move into talking about the fellowship program, which I'm really excited to kind of hear what that is all about. Highlighting a couple of the key points. You mentioned earlier, Sergeant Major, that some of the key takeaways were, like, if you're preparing to go to the Sergeant Major's Academy, that orientation course is really going to provide you the tools to set you up for success in the non-resident course. As far as the resident course goes, Sergeant Major Campbell, do you want to highlight a few things for guardsmen that are selected for the resident course of things that they should do to set themselves up for success when they arrive?
I can, and I think we've touched on a number of them already. And regardless if you're coming into the non-resident course or into the resident course, you've got to have the support of your family. Again, regardless of which method of instruction that you're coming into, without that support, it's going to be a challenge, right? Not impossible, but it's going to be a challenge. The other piece of that is that and it's like any other educational opportunity or educational endeavor. You have to be prepared. You have to budget your time and understand that there are going to be requirements. And we're all procrastinators oftentimes, and so you have to understand that and get yourself, whatever works for you. And there's a number of tools out there that can help you be successful. But as we tell our students in the resident course, they're tools, right? None of them are perfect. None of them are going to have all the answers. But just figure out which one works best for you.
Well, thank you for that, Sergeant Major. So, to kind of shift into talking about the fellowship program, which I think everyone's excited to talk about a little bit. Can you give us an overview, Sergeant Major Campbell, of what the fellowship is?
Yeah, and the fellowship program it's a phenomenal opportunity for senior non-commissioned officers. So, the way the program is set up is that Sergeants Major can apply to the fellowship program, and for a National Guard soldier, for a National Guard NCO, it's a 3-year commitment. So you PCS here to Fort Bliss, and you're enrolled in a master's program at either Penn State University or Syracuse University to obtain a master's degree. Penn State, it's lifelong learning and adult education, and at Syracuse University, it's instructional design. So that it's a 1-year master's program for either school. And then for that National Guard NCO, it's a 2-year commitment on the platform teaching here at the resident course at the Sergeant's Major Academy.
So how many applicants do you typically get per year? How many spots, I guess, do we get per year for the fellowship program? And can you give us a little bit of a dynamic of what that looks like? And then, I guess what the big takeaways are for those fellows.
So, great question. And I know we've just expanded the program. I came in cohort 4, and there were 20 slots for the fellowship program. We just selected and announced cohort 7, in which we've got 30 NCOs coming into the fellowship program. And I believe when I looked at that list and talking with Sergeant Major Sampo, I think that the National Guard has 5 NCOs in cohort 7 now. Sergeant Major Williams, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We got 5.
So again, phenomenal opportunity. Now, I will say, talking with the commandant here at the academy and the director and my peers across the force, the Army as a whole, right, all 3 components, are challenged to get applicants for the fellowship program. I mean, we filled the 30 seats this year. I think that there were about 34 or 35 applicants for those positions in the fellowship this year. We'd like to get that to a point where we have 60 or more, and we would love to get to that point where the desire to come into the fellowship program is so great that we have to turn people away.
So you mentioned it's a 3-year commitment. What does that 3-year commitment broken down look like?
So the 3-year commitment. So with the first year, you're basically here at Fort Bliss, but you're attending school, whether it's at Penn State University or Syracuse University, in a distance education perspective. Once you graduate from one of those 2 schools, then you're assigned to a department here at the academy where you become an instructor in that department. And then you teach for 2 years.
Sergeant Major Campbell, then, from your experience so far as a fellow, what are some of your most memorable experiences as a fellow, or what was the big value add that you think you've gotten during your fellowship experience that makes it such a unique Army opportunity?
So for me, I think going through the Penn State program made me a better writer, made me a better communicator. But I also think as a senior NCO, it made me a better instructor. And so NCOs, whether we're serving as an instructor at the academy or at a schoolhouse, or if we're just out in the operating force, I mean, we're still instructors and we're teaching soldiers how to do things, right? So that, for me, that opportunity at Penn State made me a better instructor. Plus, I've had the opportunity to engage with NCOs from across the services, from our multinational partners, which has helped me learn from their experiences, and hopefully they've learned from my experiences.
So it sounds like it's really cool networking opportunity working there too, with senior NCOs from across the formation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Sergeant Major Williams, then, talking a little bit about, how someone goes through the process of becoming a fellow. I know that a lot of that's routed through TR. Can you walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, so as Sergeant Major Campbell touched on earlier, the program's expanded from 20 fellows to 30 this year. So it really all kicks off with a fellowship announcement from the Non-Commissioned Officer Leader Center of Excellence, Nicole down at Fort Bliss, and they'll send that out. And then we will take that here in Training Division and Leader Development. Sergeant First Class McClellan will take that and make that into our own announcement. We will mirror a lot of the things that the active duty is looking for. Like this year, the application process was going to incorporate an actual interview via phone or over Microsoft Teams. So we did the same thing. we do not constrain the packets from the states. We'll take as many as they'll send. In previous years, we did scrub those and send down what we would consider the top 3. And in the past 2 years, we didn't have any applicants selected. This year, we got 5. We did interviews with CSM Sampa, a couple of state CSMs, myself, and the G3 Sergeant Major. And then we sent all 5 packets down there. Where it gets kind of where there's differences between Compo 1 and 2, right, is the funding piece, right? So like we have 5 fellows going down there this year, but while Nicolco funds all the tuition related expenses, anything that has to do with the college, all the rest of the funding has to come from National Guard Bureau for the PCS cost or the pay and allowance if it's a traditional guardsman. So there are some nuances there, especially when you start selecting active guard reserve soldiers that are either Title 32 or Title 10. But the process itself it's not really that difficult. I mean, as long as you have the support of your unit and state leadership, it's really anybody. And a lot of that is a testament to the Sergeant Major, the previous Sergeant Major of the Army, Daly, who did not want to constrain the fellows to the Army National Guard gets so many and the USAR gets so many in Compo, active duty. It was a send me your best and brightest, and that's who we'll take, regardless of which component they come from. So you saw that this year where we 5 of the 30 are Army National Guard soldiers.
More of that one Army perspective.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And why that matters is like you'll talk to Sergeant Major Campbell. I mean, he is the only facilitator that the Army National Guard has across the resident and the non-resident course. And you're looking at, at any one time between phase 1, 2, 3 in the resident academy, you have upwards of 800 and 900 Army National Guard soldiers in some phase of the academy. And he is the only representation that Compo 2 has at the academy actually facilitating instruction.
Wow. Yeah, that's really a unique perspective there. Talking about like representation and like how that works with what kinds of soldiers are going into the fellowship. I know Sergeant Major Campbell, we talked a little bit before about how the fellowship, wasn't intended to be, a terminal assignment, Can you expound on that a little bit?
I can, and ideally we don't want the fellowship to be a terminal assignment. And listen, I mean, I'll say it. I mean, every NCO has a terminal assignment, whatever that may be. But ideally, what we would like to see is, somebody graduate from the academy, the resident or non-resident course, go out and serve 1 or 2 tours as a sergeant major at the battalion level, come into the fellowship program, take that experience and bring that experience back and help educate the next generation sergeants major, and then be prepared to go back out to the operating force or even to the generating force. And serve at the brigade or the nominative level as a sergeant major, so that you don't just stay here at the academy for the rest of your career.
I mean, I think that's a really good point to make for like those soldiers that are prepping for this. You've seen a lot of the packets, I'm assuming, that come through for the fellowship application. If you were going to give advice to, not more junior NCOs as they're preparing and one day would be interested in attending the fellowship, what would that advice be to set themselves up for success when they get to that year level?
So one big thing, I think the first thing I say is make sure your bachelor's degree is from a regionally accredited institution. I say that in jest, but that is because we are the academy partners with outside universities for you to get your master's degree. They require you to have a regional accreditation. Might not be something you're thinking about at that level, but ask that question. And then it really comes down to your career timeline and what do you want to do. As Sergeant Major Campbell said, we don't want this to be a terminal assignment. This should definitely be value added to the force once you complete it, right? We don't want to pay for you to get a master's degree and then you retire and go do something else. We want you to take that experience that you've had as being a facilitator at the most senior level of education for the non-commissioned officer and take that back out to the force and enhance the junior NCOs.
And do you have anything else to add to that, Sergeant Major Campbell?
No, and actually, Sergeant Major Williams hit it right on the head, that regional accreditation. And I would just caution NCOs thinking about applying to the fellowship program that they really need to understand the difference between a regionally accredited institution and a nationally accredited institution. And as Sergeant Major Williams said, it's like if your undergraduate degree is from a nationally accredited institution, Penn State and Syracuse will not accept it. So that's important. I know it seems kind of backwards, but when you look at the higher education commissions, the regional accreditation holds more weight than a national accreditation.
That's very interesting. I had no idea. So while we have you both here, got like, I don't even know how many years of wisdom between the two of you here. What's your advice as far as to junior NCOs, to junior soldiers out in the formation, just on leader development in general? I know that we ask all of our guests this, just to kind of like give their advice based off of your experiences so far.
So I think I talked to, for me personally, and one of the things that I try to talk to junior NCOs about whenever I get the chance is, education's great. You're going to have to go to courses, but I think it's mentorship is a lost art, right? I am where I am today because somebody gave me good advice, and when I say mentorship, I don't just mean like hey, you find someone that's your buddy and you hunt them down and you guys talk about what you want to do. I mean, develop a network and a close-knit group of folks that don't speak like you, they don't think like you, they don't talk like you. You want a diverse mentorship background, same MOSs, different MOSs, male, female. Because as you're progressing through the ranks, and you one day may want to you be in a leadership position, a platoon sergeant, a first sergeant, you're going to encounter things that you might not be ready for, you don't know how to answer. So having a diverse group and network of peers and seniors and even subordinates that you can reach out to and get different perspectives and viewpoints, it definitely helped me in my time, and I would advise them to kind of try to do the same and start that network at early in your career as you can. The Army's big, but the longer you're in, the smaller it gets. So
that's a real good point. What about you, Sergeant Major Campbell?
And then from my perspective, I mean, Sergeant Major Williams hit on a lot of key points, and networking and mentorship, and finding that mentor. A couple of things that I would add to that is that for young NCOs coming up today, challenge yourselves. Make a deliberate attempt and a deliberate effort to get out of your comfort zone. Once you get comfortable in an organization, once you get comfortable in a position, you become complacent and you stop growing. So junior NCOs should continually challenge themselves and stretch their limits. And then the other thing that I would challenge junior NCOs to do is and we teach it here at the Academy, is take a critical look at your organization, and if you don't like how things are going, or if you have a better idea, right, get yourself in a position where you can make a change, right, and work with leadership to make that change, and to make that organization a better organization than it was when you got there.
One last question before we dip off here, and that is on the subject of resources. I know both of you mentioned, like, getting to the Academy, the importance of communicating and writing and various things. If there was a resource that you had for NCOs, officers, whoever really out there, that you would, based on your experience, you'd be like, hey, this is something that I've used over the years to reference, or I've used over the years to, help prepare myself for success, what would it be, I guess? If you want, Sergeant Major Williams, want to take that?
Resources, right? Yeah. So as an NCO, right, you don't have to know everything, but you got to know where to find it, right? So it seems like a shameless plug, but I love the Army Publications Directorate website, right? If it's not out there, it doesn't exist, and if it is out there on their site, it is most likely the most current publication. So throughout my career, I've continually referenced back to that to check myself, to make sure I know what I'm talking about and the things I'm saying aren't out of date. So if we're just talking about tools and resources, I would start there. Yeah.
What about you, Sergeant Major Campbell?
From my perspective, I would say read. Read and then read some more. Reading improves your mind, improves your ability to engage in critical thinking. It also helps you write better because as you see how other people write. And when I say read, it's like I'm going to be honest, right? When I was a younger person, my dad used to hand me, all the novels that he would read, and I read a lot of novels. And while those are interesting when you're sitting on the beach, read, and I'm not just talking leadership books, but read for the sake of knowledge, right? And to broaden your mind. The more you engage in that in reading, the better off you're going to be.
So do you have any specific books or references that you would recommend that soldiers read here?
Off the top of my head, I do. Actually, there was a book I read not too long ago titled Legacy, and I'd have to go back and look at the author. But really, the focus of that book was New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks. And it kind of went through and it talked about when a new player joined the All Blacks, they got a book. And the book was a history of the team. And then there were a whole bunch of blank pages at the end of the book. And the challenge to those new players was, what's going to be your contribution to the team?
It's really good. We'll link that. So we'll link that to our new leader development website that we launched on nationalguard.mil, so that as people are listening, if they're interested, they can find some of the information that you guys referenced here. So.
And then it's still in the bookcase behind me, so I can pull the author up and get it for you.
Well, thank you, Sergeant Major. And thank you both for coming on today and sharing some of your experience and insight on the fellowship and on the academy and leadership lessons learned in general. So,
You're welcome, sir.
Thanks for having us, sir.
If you would like more information on any of the topics discussed today, please visit us at our social media pages in the links below. Tune in to Leaders Recon over the next few weeks as we bring in today's leaders and pioneers to discuss their experiences, share their wisdom, and help you grow as a leader. We will also be announcing opportunities for you to sharpen your skills and expand your toolbox as a member in today's Army National Guard. See you next time. If you liked today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe below and leave us a 5-star review. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.